Good morning. My name is Emma Vandelander. I'm a Global Commercial Program Specialist at TexasRealtors, and welcome to today's global webinar. Starting a little late, again, my apologies. We are here today right now with Sharon von Schoenberg. She is the Canadian Real Estate Association's Product Manager in Global Services. She implements Korea's international strategy to increase global opportunities for their members. As part of that effort, she manages the Global Affiliate Program, which encourages the building of relationships between international associations and trade-related organizations. And I believe we'll be hearing about that here. Some administrative items. This webinar is about an hour long. Feel free to type any questions into the Q&A, as you guys have already been doing. Thank you for that. And that should be visible to you if you're not familiar. If you just scroll your mouse over, it's one of the items along the bottom of the screen. This webinar is being recorded, and the link will be available on the Texas Realtors website very soon. A link to the recording will be posted under the past webinars section of the events tool on the website, and it will be featured on the Texas Realtors global playlist on the YouTube channel. So Sharon, I'm gonna go ahead and pass it over to you, and I'm gonna go ahead and
Thank you. Thank you, Emma, and good morning, everyone. And I do apologize for the delay in starting, but I guess just like live events, I'm going to share my screen. So we'll start off with, let's get this going. All right, I'm just going to share this so then we don't have to watch Emma on the phone, and we have a little something visual to look at. So I was going to follow Aziz's presentation. Aziz Kanjee will be the main presenter once he logs on, often with time changes when we host webinars with other associations. We can have some issues with time, but I'm so glad all of you have taken time out of your schedule today to be with us in these really unprecedented times. Like you here in Canada as well, we are all staying safe at home. I've been working remotely now for over 2 months, probably the same as everybody there as well, and similar to your association staff. With Korea, I oversee our global initiatives, and this year, starting really in March, we've been doing so many things virtual. It's been great to connect, but always hard to present that one way. I have my kitchen staring back at me, so I'm hoping everyone can hear me fine, and please feel free to write something in the chat if need be. I'm hoping you can see my screen. Maybe Emma, you could put your camera on, just give me a thumbs up that everybody is able to see my screen fine, and you should be looking at www.koreaglobal.ca. So one of the main projects I oversee is the Global Affiliates Program, and this started almost 2 years ago now with the intent on really trying to connect our members with global members really around the world, and our major trade partner inbound and outbound, both with regards to goods and people, and real estate is US, so main focus on the United States. The program is a subscription base, and we'll get into that in a little bit, but I'll share a little more. Two main aspects of the program: education and networking. So we're really trying to help build a virtual network platform to help increase, obviously, in both inbound and outbound referrals, keeping realtors on both sides of the border part of the transaction. This here is just a screenshot, which really the roots of the program is the global directory, where you have the ability to search for our Canadian members who have opted in, and any US realtor across the US, to exchange referral opportunities. And it's a way to build your network. So you are able to search on many things, from languages to specialties, as well as designations, location, all of that. And you can actually download and save your results of that search to your own content management system, so you can begin networking. You can also send emails directly from the directory itself. In addition, each month we do a spotlight. So what happens is these will be turning video very soon, but right now there are additional questions about each other. So again, you can really learn to get to know each other and build those virtual connections for potential referral opportunities. These spotlights are shown on the front page of our website when you first come on, and then they're also featured in our monthly email. So each month they change, and it's another opportunity to promote our global affiliates and our Canadian realtor. So there's always a Canadian realtor that's on the spotlight, and the US. Emma, if you can just give me a thumbs up that you can see my slides. Okay, perfect. Okay, it's always hard talking into your computer screen, so great. And just let me know if there are any questions or anything in the chat, as I'm not monitoring that as I go along.
Will do, and I heard from Aziz, and he'll be on shortly.
Oh, perfect. Okay, great. Yeah, time change and everything always is something, but this is great. So it'll be a good lead in. It'll be something in the back of your member minds and any Canadians that may be on with us. This is just a sample of some of the Texas members we have in our directory. There are others. When you first join, right away you are added to the database, and then you're given your password where you can go in and create and provide more detail. So excuse me, if I was to click on the name, there would be more details showing. I didn't pull that up in today's, but just to show you a quick highlight. This here is just a screen capture from our Facebook group. So also part of it is a global Facebook group. It is closed. It's only open to our Korea members who've opted into global and our global affiliates who've opted in. And it's a platform to share information, again, about yourself, your market. It's not a listing site. The intent, again, is to build your brand, who you are. And if I had someone interested in Texas, why would I send them your way? So again, your elevator pitch and sharing stats of what's happening. Many associations and state associations provide market stats that you could share and really share your knowledge of the market that you're working in. This was our latest quarterly news. So every quarter we have a newsletter that goes out. We highlight different topics, and this one happened to be risk management, which I had identified before COVID. And so one of the lead articles I then had written was on just how is COVID affecting the market, but also as most of you are entrepreneurs and own your own business, how is your business plan? Do you have you thought about continuity plans and sort of the things you can't plan for that you can plan for? So we don't know when a disaster is going to happen or anything like that, but how in your business plan can you help yourself be successful during these tough times? So many of you, I am sure, have been busy building your knowledge and education, doing a lot of virtual, maybe becoming more familiar with the technology platforms for your business. So the two main articles here were around business continuity, and the other article written by Carla Ray Kidd is on, again, the risks and benefits of going global. So this was again, just went out in May. It was a little delayed because of COVID and how it affected our own business, and we slowed down a little bit, but it just did get out to everyone. So I'm excited to see that it went out, and all of our global affiliates have access to those resources. Here's just a few pictures. There's always fun, as we know. Real estate really is a personal business, and one of the key things we like to do is host networking receptions. So when we do attend conferences, if some Canadians that are also attending, we'll hold a Canadian and global affiliate reception. So all of our global affiliates who subscribe are invited. One of our largest one is at NAR, where we have over 600 attendees. So all the Canadian realtors attend that one, and our global affiliates are invited. And it's an evening with, a few drinks, some hors d'oeuvres, and an opportunity to network. Some of these other screenshots are trade shows that I go to and attend on behalf of Korea, again, promoting that growth of keeping business on both sides through that connection, referring back and forth. One of the events we're hosting next week actually is the Global Real Estate Local Markets Online. I know some US global councils have held a couple of virtual courses. This will be our first one. And we are actually breaking it into 2 afternoons. So it is the Global Real Estate Local Markets course. It is being offered from 1:30 to 4:30 Eastern time on the 26th and 27th. So it's 2 afternoons. Brian Finley is a Canadian CIPS instructor, so he'll be instructing that for us. If you're interested and you are a global affiliate, you would have access to that website that you see, korea.ca/CIPS. If you're not an affiliate but are interested in pursuing your CIPS designation, you can email me at global@korea.ca and I can get you a registration form for that. And then I just wanted to share a short video that talks about the program a little bit. So here's where things get fun. So I'm going to pause my sharing and open up the YouTube video, and we'll have a listen, and hopefully Aziz has joined us by then and we can get into the guts of the presentation. I don't want to steal his thunder. I have some statistics I can share, and if he doesn't bring them up in his presentation, I can jump in at that time. So I'm just going to pause my share while I pull up the video. Okay, so I'm going to, one moment, where is it? This always happens to me. Is it this one? share, sorry. Okay, one moment. You have to tell me if it's, I don't know if it's showing. Do you see the YouTube? You do? Okay, perfect. I'm getting a nod. All right, so let's just get this playing and just tell me if the volume's okay, Emma, with your thumbs up or down or waving crazily if it's no good. So.
In real estate, connections mean opportunities. Making global connections can increase valuable referral opportunities and grow your business internationally. With the Canadian Real Estate Association's global affiliates, get access to a network of globally minded Canadian realtors and open the door to CREA's active global realtor directory. Increased exposure for referrals, plus many more benefits. Because in the end, being a successful real estate professional isn't about where you are on the map. It's about the connections you have across it. Become a CREA Global affiliate. www.creaglobal.ca.
Perfect. So I'm going to exit now. And I will stop my screen share. There we go.
Perfect.
Perfect. So if anyone has any questions on the program, I can type some responses in the chat as Aziz is presenting, and we can also open it up after Aziz's presentation. So back over to you, Emma. Thank you.
Excellent. Thank you, Sharon, so much. And welcome, Aziz. We're happy to have you.
Thank you.
I wanted to introduce you fully. Aziz is president and broker of, his name is Azizali Kanjee. Aziz is president and broker of record at the International Property Brokers in Ontario. He has over 45 years of experience in both residential and commercial real estate. He is also a mortgage finance broker and involved in international trade, development, and franchise management. He is a member of the International Real Estate Federation, FIABCI, as president of the Canada region and vice president of the Americas, and he is a certified CIPS instructor with numerous other designations. You have quite the bio, Aziz. I had to shorten it for this introduction. Hope that's all right. And you can go ahead and take it away.
Wonderful. Thank you, Emma. Thank you for having me. My apologies for coming in late. My telephone appointments changed the time to Canadian time versus to Toronto time versus Texas time.
No worries.
So I was mixed up on my timings. So my apologies for being a little late. And Sharon, you can take the Toronto thunder away. You won't be able to take mine away. It's thundering here in Toronto at the moment, and a little bit of rain. So anyway, welcome to all the participants here this morning, and I'm really excited to be with you and talk to you about both the Canadian real estate, and we will do a little bit of India real estate as well in the process. I haven't sort of set myself up to any particular agenda, so if you have any questions, please feel free to ask them in between through Emma. Perhaps Emma will share the questions and feed them on to me. But I'll start off by talking about the Canadian real estate marketplace and how it's done, what is done, and what the status is at this point in time as we go through the COVID-19 pandemic around the world. The Canadian real estate market has been it's been very, very good for many, many years. In fact, pre-COVID, we were, I would say, having a 18 to 20 year run on upward real estate market. We really didn't go down, and the last few years have been tremendous. If we just take the Toronto, Vancouver, and some of the major markets, perhaps even a little bit of Ottawa and Montreal, we've got cranes all over the place. There are, in Toronto, for example, there are currently about 112 cranes downtown Toronto alone. So we've got tremendous amount of construction and development going. The market's been hot for the last 18 or 20 years. in the 2008-2010 period, when things were going haywire in certain parts of the world, we had like about a 6.5-hour drop in the market, and we were back on track again. So we had about, I'm going to say, a month of a slowdown, but we were back again. One of the reasons for this is our very conservative banking system in Canada. And borrowing is not as easy as it had been in the US at that point in time. And although it got easier, has got more difficult in the US, it still is always been more difficult in the US than it has been to get money in. Easier to get money in the US than to get money in Canada. Okay, the marketplace here post-COVID, or in the current marketplace, the last statistic that I was given is that we are down about 51 or 52% year over year in listings. However, the buyer market has only gone down maybe 20 or 30%. And so the market is still holding, in the sense there's activity going on, not enough inventory, and the buyers are still there. To add to this is the interest rates going down. Our bank rate is 1.25, so we can probably still pick up mortgages, 5-year mortgages at probably around the 2.6% rate. The other factor that we have going for us that makes it very difficult for us to come and buy in Texas, for example, is that our currency values vis-a-vis the US dollar is down. So today I can very comfortably say that we have a sale on for US buyers. We have a big sale sign on at the airport that says all US buyers are going to get 35 to 40% discount on everything that they buy in Canada. Okay, because the Canadian dollar is today running between 70 and 72 cents to the US dollar, which is a tremendous opportunity for US buyers to be buying in Canada at the moment. It doesn't make it very easy for the Canadians to buy in the US at this point in time because of that differential. However, having said that, we're still finding that people, once this pandemic situation is straightened out, the Canadians still do prefer the sun in Texas and in Atlanta and in Florida and in California, so that they're still going to go back there. What's going to be interesting to see is what those numbers are going to be after COVID. I would suspect that we're going to be a bit of a lesser number, at least for the next year or two, until things straighten out. How real estate is done in Canada is very similar to how it is done in the US. But a couple of things that you need to keep in mind is that we don't have escrow like you have in the US. So basically the process that happens here is that a property is seen through the MLS perhaps. The typical see the property, make an offer, offers going back and forth. On acceptance of the offer, a deposit is given. The deposit is actually generally made out in the name of the listing brokerage, which has a trust account, a real estate trust account, which is a mandated account. And this is like escrow. It stays in that account until the deal closes, or a deal falls through and there has been a mutual release by both parties, or if it goes into a problem, then it may end up with a court order deciding on what happens with that money. So the monies do not leave the real estate trust account until one of those three things have been met. We have the typical appraisal that is done through the mortgage company if there is any financing to be assumed on the property or arranged on the property. And once that financing is arranged, a typical transaction is going to probably close within 6.
Aziz, you're actually muted. We're having a hard time hearing you. It happened about midway through a sentence. I'm not sure how that happened.
Okay, I don't know how that happened. My hands are here.
Perfect, there we go.
Okay, so yeah, once the offer is accepted, the buyer is going to try and arrange financing, and appraisal is going to be done. And generally within 60 days, the transaction is going to close. At which time the balance of the monies are paid to the attorneys. The deposit that is held by the real estate company is then released to the attorneys, and the attorneys do the final payouts to all parties. Financing has become one of the key issues of the COVID situation. Earlier on, those deals that were made in perhaps January and February, many of them got affected with the COVID situation. And in the initial days, a lot of the banks started canceling out on the mortgages that they had already approved. So a lot of transactions either went into issues or extensions or even cancellations. Since the announcements by the government to the banks to allow for issues to happen, a lot of mortgages have also, existing mortgages where people had lost their jobs and could not pay it and so on. The banks have been working with all the buyers, all the owners and buyers, to see how they can still accommodate them for mortgages. So to some degree, the mortgage situation has evened out, although I think the bank's scrutiny of the application is a little more tighter for a new mortgage at this point in time. Interest rates, as I said, are still low. And our mortgages don't work typically like your mortgages in the US, in that we don't generally have 30-year mortgages. Our mortgages might be amortized 25 years or 30 years, but the mortgage term is for 5 years. So at the end of 5 years, the mortgage is negotiated with the current rate at that point in time for another 5 years and so on. So it could be renewed for 1 year, 2 years, 3 years, 4 years, 5 years. We do have now 7 and 10-year mortgages as well. But they are generally, the interest rates are a little higher than your 5-year mortgages. Your most common mortgage is a 5-year mortgage, which is amortized 25 or 30 years. Okay. If it's an investment property, the bankers might be looking for a slightly higher interest rate. You might also be required to give in a higher down payment to buy an investment or a rental property. Your typical requirements for financing are 20% down payment with a leverage of 80% for residential property. For commercial property, it would probably be a requirement of about 35% down payment. The 80% financing, 80-20 financing is your normal, as I said, but you can have insured mortgages as well, which means these are like your Fannie Mae type of secured mortgages that are secured by this, what we call CMHC, the Canada Mortgage Housing Corporation. And if we do borrow under that plan, then the interest rates are a tad bit lower under an insured plan. The typical returns on investment today are still lower in the marketplace than some places in the US. For example, in the Toronto marketplace, if you are buying a investment condominium, a brand new investment condominium, you're probably going to be breaking even or below breaking even at this point in time. The prices in the Toronto market for a new built or a pre-construction condominium today is running anywhere from about $1,100 to $1,500 a square foot. This is Canadian dollars, obviously, so deduct about 35% from a comparison for the US. But for certain parts of the US, even that is quite high. Obviously, we are much lower than New York City or perhaps San Francisco or Los Angeles. But there are other parts of the United States where prices are much, much lower. However, the biggest buyers today are in the pre-construction, or were in the pre-construction prior to COVID. Okay, we still had the lineups. We had, whole new condominium buildings selling out in a week. 200 or 300 units being sold out in a week. People were still lining up. The very interesting point to note is in certain areas of Canada, even today, as we speak, there are certain properties that are still in multiple offer situations where people are lining up to buy. And we've seen prices being offered, even if they were listed at market pricing, we're getting as much as 20%, 30% higher in buying prices. Okay, we've got a lot of international investors. The reason for that being open immigration. We officially allowed 250 to 350. This number is going to be increased next year to 350,000 immigrants a year. You have to keep in mind that our population is 1/10 of the US. Canada's entire population is in California. Okay, so we are very, very small in population. Our biggest problem in Canada is lack of population. And so we are open to immigration, and that allows us to have a lot of investors coming in. We are also seeing a lot of investment moving from certain countries into Canada. I'm going to say problem countries into Canada because of the safety and the security of the perceived safety and security of Canada around the world. Our immigration inquiries, immigration applications are far larger than the allocated allowance for new immigrants in Canada. Okay, I don't know if we have any questions, Emma, at this point. If anybody wants to ask a question at this point, we can stop for a brief moment here.
I'm not seeing anything quite yet. We can give it a second to see if anybody says
okay. And you know, I think I've covered the Canadian. You know, the U.S. investments in Canada are. The U.S. investors are the highest investors in Canada, followed by the Chinese. Now, there's a very close race between the two, but USA has always been traditionally our largest investors. But we have, our mix of investors are very different from that of the US, because we have the US buyers, we have the Chinese, we have the Indians, we have the Middle Easterners, which are a large base, And we also have a lot of Europeans. And again, because like the 52 states, we also have 10 provinces here and 2 territories. So there are preferences by certain groups of people in certain areas. Toronto or Ontario, the province of Ontario is probably the highest choice amongst most buyers, but Vancouver is a close second. And more recently, because of the property prices being lower, Montreal has been very, very active in the real estate business. We find that there are certain areas in the West, such as Calgary, Edmonton, in the Alberta region, because of the oil prices and the oil issues, they've been down for a few years, actually, 2 or 3 years now, and they continue to be flat. Of the 2 cities, Calgary and Edmonton is a little more brisk than Calgary is, but Calgary is where most of the offices were for the oil companies, and that's where the slowdown was more seen than in Edmonton. And any other questions on Canada? I can certainly then go to India, perhaps, but if there are any questions on Canada, and we can, if at the end of the conversation, we could probably have more questions from the participants.
I do see a question here, Aziz. Sure. So what is the price per square foot in a decent/nice neighborhood in Toronto?
What do you call a decent, nice neighborhood? Okay, so for a decent, nice neighborhood, often, what I would call a middle class neighborhood, we would probably be looking at somewhere in the neighborhood of $400 to $500, $600 Canadian. Okay, that's what you have to keep in mind. It's Canadian dollars, which is about 30%, 35% less than your dollar. One of the things is that we have a very diverse population, and everybody is sort of living everywhere. So it's a very mixed population everywhere. So yeah, we might have, ethnic groups in various different areas, which is encouraged here because we have some really nice Chinatowns and Little India and Little Italy, Greek town, and so on. So we have some very, very vibrant areas which help in the Canadian mosaic, as we call it. And so although you find predominantly that population in that area, it doesn't mean that's that only population you're going to find in that area, because there are a lot of people living around that area within that population as a very cohesive community. Okay, so there are various neighborhoods. So sometimes you have certain neighborhoods that would have a higher affinity for a certain group, so the prices might be higher because of that particular reason. Okay, but generally I would say that would be the mark across the board, more or less. Now we've got neighborhoods that would also have price points of $2,000 a square foot, and we have neighborhoods of we've got very, very exclusive areas where a 5,000 or a 6,000 square foot house might be selling for $8 or $10 million. We have the 2 most expensive houses in Canada right now are at the $50 million price range, and 32 million. The second one is 32 or 38 million, I believe. So we've got the high-end homes as well, and that's a different market, as you know, in the luxury home market. Okay.
Perfect. We do have another question. Is it difficult for an American to purchase in Canada? Are there extra costs for being an American and not a Canadian?
No, it is not difficult for an American to buy. No, it is not different for an American to buy. You are doing the same things as we would be doing. The only difference will be in the tax reporting, in that you will probably be reporting your taxes in the US as Canadian incomes that you get from Canada. There is a tax treaty between the US and Canada, so there is no double taxation. But we welcome US buyers, and your money is worth, like I say, I keep saying this, your money is worth 35% more than ours. So you're buying at a very, very good price today. Okay. And as a matter of fact, this range has been anywhere between 20 and 30% for the last 5 years, 6 years. It's not like it's been fluctuating to par and back and forth on a daily basis. Generally, the Canadian-US monetary policy has always been that the Canadian dollar has been generally lower than the US dollar most times. Okay.
Perfect. That is what I'm seeing for right now.
For right now.
Move
Wonderful.
on to India, that would be great.
Okay, so let's go into Indian real estate. If you go into Indian real estate, sorry, there's a question I see at the bottom of my screen here.
I saw it come in.
Yeah, maybe I'll just answer that question. Yes, we have a lot of rental property, but again, as I said earlier, depending on what you are buying, the returns on rental property are not as good in most cases in residential marketplaces. Okay, most times you are looking at an appreciation rather than a cash flow or a return on a monthly basis. Okay, but there are a lot of rental properties, everything from the condominium markets to purpose-built rental to houses being on rental and so on. Okay, so let's move on to India for a little while, and we'll come back to Canada and India later on. India is a huge market, close to 1.4 billion people. Very diverse in population, very diverse in languages, very diverse in religions, very diverse in economies, and generally a very educated population. Some of the areas, like if you take southern India, places such as Kerala and Kolkata and the southern regions, there is almost 100% literacy, which is even higher than USA and Canada, for that matter. The advantage of India, English speaking, English is the common language there, although they have 20 official languages. But English is very widely spoken. The education is mainly English medium. The amount of professionals being educated in India, the number of engineers being produced in India per year are more than the total amount of engineers in Canada, USA, and Britain put together. Okay, there is 25% of the population today is middle class, and that is growing. So there is a huge middle class coming up there. These are tech professionals, engineers, MBAs. Although there is a major brain drain of sorts going from India, and if you look at USA as a prime example, most of the tech companies are, if not run by an Indian, are the majority of the employees might be Indian. So there's a lot of cross-continental funds going back and forth. So India is a very educated, rich country, which has a lot of professionals. They've got a huge production capacity. Their manufacturing capacity is very large. The labor costs are lower. And as the middle class is growing, what is happening is that they are looking for products that they were not able to get before. So a lot of imports from around the world are coming in, but a lot of these products are now also being manufactured like right there in India. And the Indians are now taking their excess monies out and investing in other parts of the world as well. And you've seen that happen. I think in the US, India is probably your third or fourth largest buyer of property in the US. For India, investments are a bit of a problem. If you are an Indian or you are what they call a non-resident Indian, an Indian who has left India and is now living in Canada or the USA or the UK, wherever else they are, they can come in and buy. If you have no affiliation to India, then there are certain properties that you might be able to buy for commercial purposes, but not so much for residential or investment purposes. So again, it becomes a challenge for non-Indians to buy within India. Having said that, of course, the larger companies, Microsoft and Cisco and all these companies have huge presence in many parts of India. And their workers coming in from outside are huge renting market for the Indian investors. For India, they went through a huge building boom for about the last 10 years. But in the last 2 years, they had a bit of an overflow of properties. They had overbuilt. But this is was just sort of coming back to a balance again before COVID. And so I don't know how exactly it has been affected today. I was on a webinar with some senior real estate people from India a few days ago, and their consensus was that the demand that had started pre-COVID is probably going to continue for buying, and their cash flows are huge, that a lot of Indians are going to continue to be looking at the Canadian, US, UK, German, and other European markets for investments going forward. So there is an excess capital that will come out of India. The interest rates in India are high. They're running close to 9% for borrowing. But in the scheme of things, based on what they are investing and what they're getting and the rate of inflation, 9 is not a very high number for them. But again, it's important to keep in mind the rate of exchange. And the fluctuations there are quite huge sometimes. And India currently has, through the COVID situation, has dropped about 4% on the currency over the last little while. So from a buying perspective, India may not be for most of the, I don't know the mix of the people on this webinar right now, but if you do have Indian clients or people with an Indian background, it may be a good place to go and work with. in the to take your clients there. The way to work with India, and it's the same as if you were working with Canada or anybody else, it's always great to work with a partner there, referring your business to another realtor. The interesting thing is that India is very organized, or is organizing. They are not very organized in the real estate business, but they are organizing. There is no licensing as such for realtors in India. And up until now, it still continues that even the waiter serving you at a restaurant will be able to sell you a property. But they're organizing themselves to the point of having associations in many cities around India. They're sort of self-certifying, self-checking on their members. And NAR India has an agreement with NAR USA. So there is a formal NAR presence there. FIABCI, which is one of the international organizations, has a very strong presence in India. I've been to India many times with delegations or by myself, and have done a lot of business in India. One of the problems you will find is that the legal process is a little slow. Although they are getting to the point of being more effective and efficient, there are a lot of outstanding issues going back 30, 40, 50 years that have not been resolved, such as title deed issues. So many title deeds are not clear. So when you are dealing with acquiring a property, you need strong legal presence and people who really know how to work through that system to make sure that if you are buying, you are actually buying a proper title deed. This is not so much the problem with properties that were newer built in the last 10 years or so. Most of them have been more organized. You will find the price of properties are generally, obviously from USA and Canada standards, the price points are much lower. For the local Indian, that might be very, very high. But for us, it may not be because of the exchange rates and so on. But for those Indians that are in the middle class or a higher class, in financial classes, I mean, then what you're going to find is that these people are spending large amounts of money on real estate. Real estate is their preferred investment. And there are houses, there's certain areas, for example, in Mumbai, on the waterfront, it is not unusual to pay over $1 million for a 2-bedroom apartment. And this is India, okay? Which 25 years ago, India and China were said to be basket cases, that are never going to succeed. And you know where they are today. India's growth is huge. India's population growth is also huge. India's population is going to surpass China's population in the next 15 years. And so when you have such a large English-speaking population, you will find a lot of people will be moving, and they do move. They look for more opportunities. There is a brain drain back to India as well. And some of the largest technology companies are right in the Bangalore region, for example, of India. Bangalore, Hyderabad, and a few of the other cities are major. They're the Silicon Valley of India. And if you see some of those company campuses, they sit on 50, 60, 70 acres, and they have a population, a working population of 30 to 40,000 people in a campus. It's like a city within a campus. And they are modern, very, very modern. Okay, And many of these companies have done work for US companies in terms of greening our economies. They've developed green prototype buildings and all kinds of things in India for Western countries. Okay, so although you might not see all of that as you land in Mumbai or Calcutta or wherever, the cleanliness and the brightness, that the money is there. They have the money and they are using it, they're spending it. And as you know, anywhere in the world where the middle class grows, business is going to grow, economy is going to grow. It's the middle class that really builds the country. And India is no exception to that rule. Any questions on India?
I'm not seeing anything come through. I saw Larry asked a question about FinTrack obligations to buyers or sellers when involved in real estate. I think that was back when we were talking about Canada. I'm not sure if it's...
That is a Canada question. Although many parts of the world are actually looking at some sort of FinTrack, but FinTrack is actually started off in the USA, but Canada was first in taking effect. USA came into the picture taking effect later on. FinTrack, for those who, I'm sure everybody knows, but for those who don't, it's the financial tracking for, you know, drug money, money laundering and fraud, etc. In the Canadian real estate industry, FinTrack is part of our transaction. So a real estate salesperson has to identify each of the clients he's dealing with. He's also got to identify what the nature of their relationship is, the business and relationship, where the monies are and where they were originating. And many times the banks doing the financing are also doing a secondary FinTrack check on this monies, where the down payment came from. So it's very, very important that when monies are coming into Canada, as they are in the US, that they come bank to bank, and that they are in the bank at least 2 or 3 months prior to the transaction, because when the monies come in, the banks themselves are also doing a FinTrack in the background. And so if it is already from bank to bank, the chances are that the monies are clean while you are dealing with it. But the onus here in Canada is very high on the real estate salespeople to check this, identify the person, and so on. I won't get into it in detail, but there is even a question where it says, what is your opinion of this client? Is he clean or not? Okay. So you almost have to get to that point, and we've almost been made policemen to check on this as salespeople on this. But FinTrack is a very important part of a real estate transaction in Canada, necessarily so, and it's important. I believe it is an important fact that we should be watching out for it, because we could get into trouble while doing a transaction, and especially if you're dealing with foreigners. This is very important to be dealing with.
Perfect. Thank you for that. Thomas says, main cities you recommend in India to get in contact with a realtor for partnership?
Thomas, good question. Depending on the type of property you're looking for, the major cities in India might be New Delhi, Mumbai, Bangalore, Goa, Kerala, Kolkata, Pune, Ahmedabad. So these are all in different states as well. Depending on what you're doing, if you're going to do something like you've got an IT type of a client, then Bangalore and Hyderabad are going to be your spots. If you're going to go to you're just doing pure investment, Mumbai is your, or Delhi might be. Delhi is the government seat. Mumbai is the other capital. The capital of India is Delhi, but Mumbai is the business capital. And so those are the two major cities. But then around Delhi, for example, are all the smaller towns like Agra and Jaipur and Udaipur and so on. They all have their own strengths and weaknesses. What you will find an Indian buyer going back to India to buy is generally going to go back to his hood, where he's come from, that area that he came from, which is not recognizable to him anymore because that's all gone through a development. But he will probably choose to go to where he originally came from or close to that area. Unless, like, there might be a guy coming from Delhi who might be an IT guy, but who now wants to go to Bangalore. And I use Bangalore as an IT thing because when you go there, just to give you an idea, the spending power of Bangalore between the ages of 25 and 35 is humongous. That group has got so much money, and I'm talking about spending money that they go out and spend, whether it's at the clubs, whether it's eating out, whether it is buying property, whether it's traveling. That group has become the group that is spending today. And that's the group that, in most of these IT cities, as I would call them, Hyderabad, Bangalore, Kolkata, those places are the youth. These are these young people who are your targets. And they've got the money to even bring overseas and spend. And they are the ones, they are coming, they're buying, they're settling there, and then they're bringing their families over as they come. Okay.
Perfect, thank you. I'm not seeing any other questions come through.
Sharon, do you have that screen about Canada, the growth of properties and then how they were going through till March or so?
Yes, I do. Yeah, I had just one quick question, Aziz, on India before we leave that topic. If we have time, I know we're running over, so if people have to leave, it will be recorded. And I hope, Aziz, your time is okay. But from a transaction side, so if we have either in Canada or the US an Indian purchaser coming over, how does that transaction look different? If they're not used to the more organized, are they used to filling out forms? Are they used to having certain questions asked of them?
Good question. Most Indians now, if they've been a new buyer or grown up in the last 10 years in India, become business people or whatever in the last 10 years, are familiar with having a realtor or dealing with a realtor. But the majority of them, as I said, India has not got organized real estate. So they don't have that marketing where they say, use a realtor. And so most people don't have that. Many people will not have that relationship or know how to work with a realtor. So when they're going to come to North America, they're going to knock at every realtor's door. And they're going to want to say, okay, Emma, what can you give me? And Sharon, what can you give me? And Aziz, what can you give me? Not realizing that any one of us can give them everything out there because of the MLS that we have. So getting them to sign a buyer's agency is a very tough thing. Okay. The other thing is, if they want to, their way of looking at a property, keep this in mind. This is a very important thing, is if you're suddenly going to show a property and suddenly you see 22 people coming out to see that same property with that person, that's not unusual because it's a family thing. Everybody else wants to come out and see it all at the same time and make a decision on it. There's a hierarchy. The senior people always have the say. Now, these are things you'll pick up at the CIPS class that Sharon talked about. I am one of the CIPS instructors as well. So you'll find in those kinds of books, courses, And books like Kiss, Bow, and Shake Hands, for example, will be a good guide for you to see how things are done. To the same point, you also have to look at culture and how they deal, what you do, how do you speak with them. When you say something to them in one way which may be normal for us, they might take it as we're telling them off. Our tone, our way of saying it, and our respect to the elders, those kinds of things are very important in that culture. But to the point of forms, getting them to sign a buyer agency agreement is going to be very tough. But you have to educate them why we need this agreement. Why do you need them to sign this? Mm-hmm. That you can represent them better, and that you'll be able to find them anything that is out there better than dealing with 3 or 4 people, because suddenly the 3 people are talking to the seller thinks there are 3 buyers, when really there is only 1 buyer. Okay, so those are the kinds of issues you got to deal with in that. So and again, to the point, Sharon, I think I've answered your question.
Yes, yeah.
But to the point about which agents to deal with, if you are a CIPS, there is a CIPS network. There are certain CIPS members there. But again, FIABCI might be your better route, because FIABCI is a lot stronger in India than CIPS is at this point in time. And if you need if anybody needs any kind of context or some kind of context to this, please let me know, and I'll try and help wherever I can to get you out there.
Perfect. So I do have that slide deck if we wanted to just go back to Canada for a moment on our first quarter and projections into 2020. Aziz, if you want me to put those up?
Yeah, please, okay. If you would.
Okay, for those.
They're very pretty slides, difficult, very pretty slides.
Okay, so I'm just going to go into slideshow mode. All right, so we'll go ahead. I don't know if you want to speak to these, Aziz.
You remember I talked to you that for the last 18 to 20 years, we've been on an upward trajectory. These are the real numbers, right? Where we were, activity was just on the way up all the way. There was really no drop. And even if you look at 2008, 2009, it was a very small drop, and it just kept on going up. Mm-hmm. Okay.
So I can go, here we go. So it shows the trending, what happened in March.
So if you see this slide up to March, March 19th, we had March 2019, we had almost 37,000 homes, whereas March 20th, we're down 14%. But again, you have to keep that in mind, that was a result of deals that were done in, February, March, that went close. So when we see April, I think we're going to see
we'll see some change. So I'll just go ahead. This is actual activity, and this is sort of year over year. So we were starting strong. That's mainly the first half of March, I think, till March 13th happened. So I'll just go ahead.
So listings here, we're showing in March 12% down.
Yeah, from over February, I believe. And that again is when basically in Canada, March 13th was when we started to see all of the shutdown and stay home requests coming. And this just shows price increases over March of last year.
If you notice on this slide how prices have been just continuously, steadily going up.
Yeah. The same here. Prices were up nationally in Canada, March over March. Again, a lot of this is from the early March. And then this is one of the statements from our senior economist, Sean Cathcart, was basically saying March is interesting. There's 2 sides to March. Early March, we saw Things looked on track for a very strong spring market all across Canada. Of course, there are some regional differences, as you all know, as realtors in different parts of Texas and wherever you're calling in from, but things were looking good. And then March 13th happened, and what we're seeing, numbers aren't out yet for April. They should be out any day now. But things were down quite a bit. And as Aziz mentioned at the beginning, I think it was up at roughly 51.5% over last year. So, and that was the last slide I had there, Aziz. I'll let you.
Yeah, no, that's wonderful. I just wanted to give you an idea on where we are. My personal thought on this is that we are going to see all across the world, but especially in North America, I think we're going to see a huge adjustment to some types of residential, but more in the commercial area. I think we will see a lot of adjustment. Office and retail, I think, will be mostly affected. And I think if you are a commercial realtor, you're going to have to rethink your business, your whole business mode and plan. And I think this is a perfect time for you to plan forward and think about what can be done. I think industrial will still be a little strong. Small, medium, and large industrial will be strong for a little while. In the residential, those of you who are in perhaps things like student housing, I think you might have to rethink if universities are going to go back to, are going to go into distance education, which many universities around the world are looking at doing right now. But this is only me saying it. I've only, just my thoughts. But that's the direction some of my personal thinking is going at this point in time. Okay. Don't discount the smaller towns, because I think what's going to happen now is people, if they are distance working, distance educating, they won't mind going and living in a cheaper town, in a suburb, or a better place than they are in right now. So those are the kinds of things I think are going to happen. And we are seeing that here also right now, that people are thinking moving 50 and 60 miles away and commuting if they had to once or twice a week, but living a quality of life somewhere else. Okay. So that's my pitch. I hope I covered a lot for you. I'm available if you have any questions at any time. Please connect through Emma, I guess, would be your best contact to do that, and she will share my details if needed. Sharon, thank you, and Emma for arranging this webinar.
Thank you so much, Aziz. This was fantastic. And thanks to everybody who joined. I think these questions were really lovely. We covered a lot of ground. So I really appreciate your time, Aziz and Sharon. And if you have any questions, yes, Sharon just sent an email if you have any questions about her global program. And I'm happy to relay any more information if you want to reach out to me.
Yes, I'd like to add to that Sharon's request. The global program with CREA is fantastic. You'll build a lot of relationships with some very strong Canadian realtors. Also remember that CREA is very active with NAR. We're strategic partners together, and we share a lot of information and a lot of knowledge. So, there is a relationship, so use that relationship. But Sharon's your greatest source you can find in Canada.
Thanks, Aziz. Well, I've got great help out there by yourself. So yeah, I just wanted to again echo, thank you very much, Emma, for having us on your webinar this month. It's been great, and we'll also post it up at our site. And for those of you, I wanted to mention some of the research we've been doing in Canada as the International Activity Report in Canada, similar to what NAR has been doing for quite a while. We worked with NAR actually to customize the survey to Canada, and our 2019 results will be be out very shortly. They're just being translated in format. We produce all of our research stats in English and French. So there's a little bit of a delay there, but I wanted to just quickly share as we close off that on our survey, Texas was, according to our members who responded to actual international activity last year up until it closed as of November, the end of December, I should say, 2019, Texas was the second largest reported state buying in Canada, non-resident, so that's investment property, and of course, as Aziz mentioned earlier, geography, a lot of that in the provincial, in Alberta and Saskatchewan provinces, so more in the western regions of Canada, but there is that influx of Texans into Canada and Canadians into Texas, so great to build those networks, and I look forward to answer any questions on that, and again, send any questions if you had anything for Aziz as well, and I can pass that on for him, and you'll find him in the global directory. If you are a global affiliate, you just search Aziz and he will come up. So thank you both, and have a great day, everyone.
Perfect.
Fantastic.
Thank you so much, and have a lovely rest of your week.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Talk to you soon.
Thank you, Emma. Take care.
Bye.